Hey guys, welcome into the Bear With Us podcast. I am Jack. He is Frank. As always, we are going to be talking some Bears, obviously, this being the Bears With Us podcast. We will get into our Bears Falcons preview in a little bit, as we always do after we finish our Week 11 picks. But first, there are a couple things that Frank and I wanted to get out there and talk about. Number one, I would say being the big news being that Khalil Herbert was placed on IR, so he's out for 4 weeks. I tried to do some digging. Even the Chicago Bears website didn't list what the exact injury was, so not totally sure what's going on there. Before we get into the other stuff we wanted to talk about, Frank, what are your initial thoughts on Khalil Herbert missing the next 4 games here?
It sucks. I mean, he's one of the best players on offense that the Bears have. I mean, you sort of rank them. Obviously, Justin Fields is 1. You can make the case that Herbert's number 2, right? I mean, I'm not saying he is, but like, who else is even in contention? Him, Montgomery, Mooney. I'd like to put Claypool. We don't know the full utilization, but the list is short. Is the point that I'm making? So like, this is a huge loss for the Bears on offense. He has been their best running back this year. But I think to further that, why I dislike it as I'm looking into the future is Montgomery is due for a contract. And the one thing, and it was funny because I was going to bring that to this episode, and I was going to say the one thing that I'm really narrowing in with when it comes to Khalil Herbert, is how well he can improve over the course of these next, or this, half of the season at pass blocking, because I think that's going to be a determining factor as to whether or not they bring back Montgomery, because that's the one thing that Montgomery has him beat by, and it's not even particularly close. So if you're thinking about value, in protecting Justin Fields, I think that's an underrated way to do that, is to get a running back who can sort of read gaps and know when he needs to lay the lumber on a linebacker that's blitzing or a defensive tackle that, has made his way inside. So on a multitude of levels, this is awful. And then even other thoughts are like, now does Montgomery take the lion's share and you're leaving him open to get hurt? Because even if he doesn't re-sign with us, I like Montgomery. I want him to get a contract somewhere, if not with us, because I think he's earned it. He's played really well. That may leave him up for injury, so those are a few of my initial thoughts. Did you have any different thoughts initially upon hearing the news?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously not ideal, just given what he was able to do in this offense. I mean, if you needed a big play, Khalil Herbert outside of Justin Fields was usually the next guy making a big play. So that's definitely, I think that will hurt this, because, Frank, I know we've talked about pass blocking being important, and it definitely is. But David Montgomery, just something hasn't looked quite right in this offense. I don't know if it's necessarily maybe just he doesn't fit what they're looking to do. He just doesn't look fast. He's never really looked like, he's obviously never looked like a burner or anything like, Alvin Kamara or anything like that. But I mean, he just, it looks like he's getting hit at after 3 or 4 yards every single time. And he's not really breaking tackles like he used to. And they still haven't really been getting him involved in the pass game, which is still kind of strange to me. They aren't setting up those screens for running backs, which is just, it's a little weird. So I don't know if maybe David Montgomery just doesn't fit. But the positive of Herbert being out is that it does open the door for some other guys to step up. Obviously, Trestan Ebner is a name that comes to mind. Velus Jones. I mean, Frank, time is running out on this rookie season for Velus Jones to make some sort of impact on this team in a positive way. Receiver, you kind of have your receivers locked down, right? You have your 5-man rotation of obviously Darnell Mooney. You have Cole Kmet as one of your top pass catchers now. Chase Claypool, Byron Pringle, Dante Pettis, and Equanimeous St. Brown as your guy who's really going to play wide receiver when you're looking to block downfield. So you have there aren't a lot of opportunities there. Can running back be one? I know that's something you and I have talked about multiple times on this podcast. I've seen a lot more people today sort of starting to bring that up as well. I mean, you're going to have to find some opportunities to get this kid involved. At the very least, you're going to have to seriously consider activating him to be your kick returner or punt returner. Because what other options are there? Dante Pettis, I mean, he's okay.
Been fine. Yeah.
But, I mean, this is what you drafted Velus Jones to do. You got to give him a chance at some point, right?
But see, I agree on the surface with what you're saying, but they did give him a chance. And granted, if that was the chance they gave him, it's a shorter leash than you would like to see from a third rounder. But I think the other thing to take into consideration is they also seen him at practice. And they've never commented on whether or not he's had good or bad practices. But for the sake of what I'm going to say, let's just imagine he's had some bad practices. But they say, you know what? It's a possibility that he's just one of those guys that doesn't practice well but plays well. That's just a thing. Like at any level, that's a thing. You see guys on practice, at practice that look like shit. They get into the game, all of a sudden, a light switch goes on. And in this scenario, let's say they did that, and he went out there, he's muffed some punts. That's lost us the game. He misses out on a beautiful deep ball a few weeks ago that would have been like a 40-something yard gain, and it's the final straw for me. As a coaching staff, we can't continue to put this guy out there because he hurts the team more than he helps them. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying in that scenario, I can see that him not being activated at all, because you have to, the reason why I painted that picture is because you have to imagine that the scenario to the coaching staff has to be pretty dire when he can't get on the field when Byron Pringle was still on IR before we traded for Claypool. And it's like, we had nobodies basically out there. It was Darnell Mooney and EQ and Pettis. Dante Pettis was getting snaps over him in the slot and on the outside. I mean, that's not a good look at all from a third rounder. And to your other point, this is pure speculation on our end, but it's because we see how good he is with the ball in his hands. He looks explosive. And we talked about this when he had that touchdown run. We talked about it when he had a pretty good gain on a couple of bubble screens and such. When he gets the ball in his hands, he looks like a good football player. It's about getting the ball in his hands.
Right.
With this injury, I would think the coaching staff could recognize that and get him. It didn't have to be 20 snaps at running back. Maybe 5 or 10, 2 or 3 handoffs, maybe a screen and see what happens. But I hope it happens because you have to salvage. You have to try to salvage the situation some way. I would hate for the very first skill position player that Ryan Poles picks up is cut in a year or two. Again, on one hand, you commend that he's able to just recognize, hey, he's not it, and you move on from him. But that doesn't negate the fact that you still pick this guy in the third round and also didn't pick guys in the second round that were there that are clearly better than him.
Yeah, and we already have we have examples now of third round punt returners getting cut. Green Bay just cut Amari Rodgers. He was their former third round pick. So it's definitely not inconceivable to think that Velus Jones, if he doesn't step it up, could very well be that guy who does get cut, because there really aren't a lot of opportunities. And you're right, Frank. I think that's what's frustrating for Bears fans right now, and sort of just not really understanding what is going on with Velus Jones, because it's not like when he touched the ball, he looked terrible, right? He was making terrible reads, terrible cuts. He didn't know what he was doing. He looked good. He looked like an explosive player, and on an offense that's short of that, or at least was before, Cole Kmet really came into his own and has been just absolutely fucking incredible lately. You don't really have any big play guys. Now that Chase Claypool is here, he's starting to get mixed in a little bit more. I'd love to see them go his way, as the offense continues to progress. I think the next couple weeks are honestly a great opportunity for him to do so. But it's just strange that the Bears were sort of not giving a guy a chance. And I'm not even saying he should just get a chance because he's a third round pick, like you said. But it was just weird that a guy who you obviously valued highly, you drafted him in the third round, a guy who looks explosive, a guy who adds something to your offense that you don't really have a lot of at the time, and they didn't even have him dress. Like that's I think what Bears fans are like, what is going on? Like it's such a I feel like we're in such a strange space, Frank, because you and I, as Bears fans, have experienced rebuilds before, right? We've gone through it. This one feels weird. It feels like they're developing faster than they ever have before. They're not necessarily competing. I think that's very clear from trading Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn. But like the Bears aren't giving young guys chances just because they're young guys or just because they're building. They're still saying we are going to play the best guys we have. And that's it. It's fascinating. I think it's a good indication of what this culture is going to be moving forward and what Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus are looking to build this team like, which I think can be encouraging, but it also, you do have to criticize them a little bit. I mean, can you not recognize that it makes more sense for Velus Jones to be playing right now than it does for Dante Pettis to be playing? And I'm just picking a name out of a hat. I'm not saying Dante Pettis has been good or bad. I'm just saying just a random name. Like, does the development of this offense, is Dante Pettis playing? What does that do for you as opposed to seeing what your third round pick gives you?
Yeah, but you know what? I even struggle with that, Jack, because we've also never really had a quarterback who's progressed like we have with Justin Fields. Because you think about, I mean, the best quarterback we've ever experienced was Jay Cutler. But I think we sort of stunted his growth, and he just was who he was, albeit as talented as he was. He just never really got better or worse than that. As he got older, you can make the argument he got a little bit worse. And then Mitch just sort of halted. He sort of was who he was. But now we have a quarterback who's ascending in a way that, again, we've never seen in our lifetime. I mean, my grandpa's told me about Sid Luckman a time or two, and that's probably the only time I've heard about, a phenomenal quarterback in a Bears uniform. And I say that to say sometimes having just a more competent player may be better for that, because we know that development of Justin Fields is the most important thing here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like that's what I think that's sort of why I harken back when it comes to David Montgomery's pass blocking, because it's like I think Herbert is the better pure runner at this point, and he fits this system better, this running style that they have implemented, or running game. But the pass blocking has to mean something, and I feel it's the same way with like Velus Jones. Like whatever he was doing wrong within this offense, they probably felt was stunting Justin's growth. If they didn't feel that way, maybe they would say, hey, you know what, right now in this moment, Dante Pettis may be better, but we need to develop this kid. And so there has to be like that sort of balance to it. But I lean more towards you, but I feel like we both lean that way because I don't think we fully understand what it takes to develop a quarterback, because we've never like experienced it to a degree where it's like sometimes Poles says something, or Eberflus or Luke Getsy, and I'm like, damn, that's right, that's true. And even like to a point like last year when people were breaking down Justin Fields' film and that Niners game and that Steelers game, and I was like, damn, I never even thought about that with a young quarterback, and like what he just did, why it looked bad on the surface, but it was actually progress. You know what I mean? Because we just never have had it before. And the other thing that I did want to talk on really quick with this situation is this is a huge opportunity for Trestan Ebner. Maybe from my angle, more, it means more to me than anyone else, because maybe right or wrong, I was really excited about him after I watched his tape when we drafted him, because I thought he could be another explosive player. Again, that doesn't mean like he's the lead back right away, but just like a little gadget play every now and then, like, are you even like graduating to being the third down back, like you're sort of our James White type of thing. And when he got reps, he just didn't look anything like his college tape. Like he didn't look quick, he didn't look fast. He even looked a little bulkier. Like, I don't know if they asked him to bulk up or if he did it on his own. I'm like, this could be a really big opportunity for him, because if you think about last year, Khalil Herbert was nowhere near a lead back. He didn't really get his shot until Montgomery got hurt. So this could be another one of those situations where he steps in and we look towards next year and we say, you know what, Montgomery, thank you for your service. This was a phenomenal 4 years, but we got to let you go because now we have two guys that we have faith in.
and we want to play and get them involved in the
Yep.
offense as well. Yeah, I mean, see, but the conversation that you're having with Trestan Ebner is exactly what I'm alluding to with Velus Jones. Like, Trestan Ebner is going to get an opportunity. Is he getting an opportunity because he's one of the best players they like at the running back position, or is it just we need a running back? He's one of the guys that plays that position. So you see what I'm saying? Like, Velus Jones, this is in my opinion, the absolute perfect opportunity to play him at running back, just to see what you have. Like, I feel like if Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy are out on Velus Jones already, to me that's like a huge knock against them, because there's no way. And again, I know what you're saying. Like, you're talking about, we obviously don't see them in practice, and that is true. We do not see them in practice. But like, how can you say that you have a full evaluation of a guy when he's barely played? Like, even when he was active, Luke Getsy really wasn't using him all that much, and it's like he would get this. They'd run a jet sweep. He'd get a 12-yard gain, and then he'd disappear for like 2 quarters at a time. And it's like, what? Like, I just don't understand why they're not using him. Like, it's almost my complaint that I had with Arthur Smith, and we're going to talk about him a little bit later when we do Bears Falcons. But like, why draft guys and then not use them? I understand they're rookies. I get he's a rookie, but like, one of your defenses for the pick, because it was a question that popped up, him being an older prospect, why did you draft him in the 3rd round? Why did you feel like that was an okay time to take him? Well, we feel like he's not going to need that much development. We feel like he's going to be able to come in right away and play. And then you just don't use him. Like, I just don't understand that. So from your angle on Trestan Ebner, I feel like it applies even more so to Velus Jones, to at least give him an opportunity to see if he fits in your offense somewhere. You can't just give up on him already. You can't.
That's fair. And again, I lean more so towards what you're saying, because I don't know how big of an indictment it would be, whether large or small, but it is an indictment, because I think you look at Velus Jones and you can see that he can do things on a football field. And if you are Luke Getsy, thinking about maximizing people's talent, he's someone that you got to get a little bit more out of. So that portion I agree with. Again, if he's just not very good outside of the few flashes that we've seen from him, it is what it is. And hopefully they're just more open about that, so we at least have an understanding that, if we ever do part with him, or as we start to fill out that receiver room and he just falls out of the rotation even more next year or whatever. But I agree with you. I mean, it's a similar conversation on a much smaller scale that we have with Mitch and Nagy, where it's like, we know he may not be good or great or anything, but like, he can do some things. Like, let's start maximizing what he can do. And I think the same could be said for Velus Jones, where it's like, maybe he's not all that great at catching, but when you get the ball in his hands, he looks really explosive. So let's find a way to get the ball in his hands, whether that means running back, whether that means sort of like the H-back type of role where you're lined up on the side of a tight end or right behind a tight end slot. So like something, let's try to do something, because he can make somewhat of an impact. Like you said, hopefully more of a positive one than anything. Even if it means like going in the next year, he's like your wide receiver 4, but he's more of a gadget player. That's okay. Right. But it's like, we don't even know if he can be that at this point.
Yeah. And, I just think, and this will kind of segue us into our next conversation, because this may shock our listeners to hear, but Frank and I disagree on something pretty important to the Bears conversation. I found it interesting because usually you and I are sort of on the same page, and I've heard a lot of comments about that, about how we need to be more like Skip, and we need to be more like Stephen A, and we need to be like, those shows that just scream at each other the entire time. I disagree with that. I enjoy having a solid conversation with Frank, but I think this is one of the few things we disagree on so far. But before we get to that, it's just like, it's so funny to me, and you brought up Matt Nagy, and this is kind of why I was going this way. It's just like every single week is just such an indictment on him as an offensive coach and as a play caller in general. I don't know how he ever gets another job as a head coach in the NFL. Like, he couldn't use Justin Fields at all. He couldn't use Cole Kmet at all. Like, you look at what Cole Kmet, and granted, it took Luke Getsy a little bit to figure out exactly how to. I mean, he was a ghost for the first 6 weeks of the season, or 7, 8 weeks. Like, it took him a minute to get here. But now it's like, dude, where has this guy been? Why did they not use him? And it's like, it goes back to what I was talking about with Velus Jones. Like, Matt Nagy talked about Cole Kmet like he was their Travis Kelce. Remember, that was like where we we're like excited about, them picking him, things like that. And he just never figured out. He was throwing fades to fucking Jimmy Graham. Like, what are we doing here? It's just so funny to see how certain guys have flourished and grown. And it goes back to something that you and I had talked about, I don't know how many times. Everyone who is criticizing Mitch Trubisky in the Bears offense and like he's just holding them back, he's not the guy. It's like, who else in this offense is producing? Nobody. And we thought that maybe Nagy just wasn't a good teacher. He just wasn't a good teacher of his like able to explain how his offense works. I think Luke Getsy has figured out a way to do that, because there are some guys that are really stepping up. I'm hoping Darnell Mooney can sort of catch up to that as well, because he's made some really nice plays, but he hasn't had that ascension. He looks more like a guy that you and I had thought he was, right? Like a wide receiver too. He just doesn't look like the guy that they were hoping he'd be and continuing that growth into a wide receiver one.
Agreed. But Jackie, I think it's time to get to the disagreement here. Because shot me a text, and I've seen the rumblings and I've ignored it all over Twitter. I've just completely ignored it, because I'm not going to lie to you. I think it's asinine that this is even a conversation. I do. But I think we disagree more philosophically on the issue than the actual subject at hand. So I'll spell it out for everybody. This week, there has been a lot of headlines and a lot of videos. I think, was it Dan Orlovsky that is at the forefront? Yeah. So he's at the forefront of saying that Justin Fields should be an MVP candidate this season. And I just wholeheartedly disagree. I just don't, you can't have him as your MVP. Even if he had, like, let's just say he has the same type of game the last 2 weeks that he did the rest of this season. He's compiling 300 combined plus yards the rest of it, whether it's passing, running, however it works, and we continue to lose. We're probably going to get 1 or 2 more wins over the course of the year, if not even 3. That's not MVP worthy to me. Because to me, winning has a lot to do with who was MVP. Like, even if Jalen Hurts fizzles out a tad bit over the last couple of weeks of the season, I would still favor him much more than I would with Justin Fields. And that's obviously not to say that I think Justin Fields is great right now. I love it. I'm starting him everywhere that I have him in Dynasty. I love the way he's producing. But just from a philosophical standpoint, I can't. I mean, like, were these conversations happening with Deshaun Watson when he threw for like 5,000 yards and they won 4 games? I would have felt the same way then. It's just like, how can you give someone MVP? Like, what were they most valuable for? Winning 5 games?
So this to me is always an interesting question, an interesting debate, because it's such a unique way to interpret what most valuable means to you. So, for example, you believe that the best player on a winning team should constitute MVP. My issue with that, Frank, is that if that was the case, then there should never be another winner of an award outside of 1 to 2 guys. And right now, I'm talking about right now. I'm not talking about the past. Right now, Patrick Mahomes, and I guess and probably Josh Allen. Those are probably your 2 guys. But
yes,
to me, I think it's more fun and engaging. Like, you look at the NBA. LeBron James should win MVP every single season. Maybe not this year because they're not, he's older. Their Lakers are terrible. But like that is the most valuable player on your team. You put LeBron James on any single roster, and he infinitely improves that whole team. But you look at Derrick Rose's the 2011 season, and he wins MVP. But they weren't necessarily the best team, but he was the best player, and he made that team better. So I understand where you're coming from. That winning should matter. I just feel like we've seen examples from other sports where that isn't necessarily the case, where you look at what Justin Fields is doing, and the only other person that is doing what he has or did what he's doing now is Lamar Jackson when he won MVP. Like, and I get it, but I don't think it should be held against Justin Fields that his defense can't stop anybody. Like, I think if you put, we talked about this after the Miami game, you flip those quarterbacks. Tua Tagovailoa is not putting up 30 points with this offense. It's just not going to happen. Justin Fields has elevated this offense, has literally risen them from the grave. You think about the Packers' performance, the Texans game, the Giants game, hell, even the Vikings game. I mean, the Vikings game was really what started all of this, in my opinion. He didn't finish with the best numbers, but he brought them back from a 21-point deficit. Commanders game, Thursday Night Football, they moved the ball. They just couldn't punch it in the end zone. The Cowboys game, people thought that the Cowboys were going to kill him with that offensive line going up against that defensive line. He had a respectable showing, 3 total touchdowns, no turnovers, right? Then he goes, that was the Patriots game before the Cowboys game, against one of what we thought was one of the best defenses in the league, and Justin looked like he belonged. And then you see what he did against the Dolphins and what he did against the Lions. I just don't think that there's a lot of other people that you could put into this Bears offensive system right now and expect someone to play better than he's playing right now. So last thing I'll say real quick, and then I'll let you retort to that. But I'm not necessarily saying that Justin Fields should win MVP. I'm not saying I'm there yet. I absolutely believe he should be in the conversation, though.
I think, in everything except for that last statement, I agree with. From the philosophical standpoint, this is why I've always said, like, when people debate Michael Jordan and LeBron, they talk MVPs. I'm like, you just shut up, because they should have both won MVP 15 times. Like, they were the most valuable player in the league their whole careers, damn near. Like that's a stupid argument. So from that standpoint, I totally agree. But that's not quite the same argument here. Everything that you named, from the games to his performance to him really being probably the only player outside of Mahomes, Lamar, and Josh Allen that could probably succeed in this offense and do what he's doing, that means offensive player of the year to me. Yeah. Like, I would be completely okay. As a matter of fact, I would say he should be the front runner for offensive player of the year right now. When you add in the context of the help that he has around him, like, who else would be there? Maybe Tua, but you think about all the weapons he has. Tyreek, but again, he's getting fed, and it's not his fault. I think he's this year the best receiver in the league. I don't think that's controversial to say. But a great receiver, Justin Jefferson. These great receivers just need competence around them to put up really good numbers. Justin Fields, for him to do what he's doing with like nothing around him is insane, quite literally to a point where he's breaking rushing records because he's like scrambling, looking for someone to throw to, and no one's there. You know what I mean? Like, he's like quite literally taking it to his own hands. So obviously he's having a phenomenal year. But when I think about the scope of MVP, especially in the NFL, it's usually the best player on the best team, or one of the best teams. But that's what makes me, again, that's why it turns into a different conversation when you talk about like what MVP should actually look like. Because I think Tom Brady and Peyton Manning should have had more than they had. Like, it's very clear that they were MVPs of seasons. Like, pro sports, like sort of the Cinderella narrative or like we came out. So that's probably why Jalen Hurts is going to win it this year if they just continue to win and he plays as well as he has. I'm not saying he's not deserving of it, but again, when you talk about most valuable, I think this season it's Patrick Mahomes, and I don't know if it's particularly close. If you're just objectively forgetting narratives, he's been the best football player on the planet this year, especially with Josh Allen's struggles as of late. So I get what you're saying there. But again, for me, my biggest disagreement when it comes to Justin Fields is he hasn't won. And if we're speaking just objectively, he hasn't closed out games yet this year.
Yeah.
You think, and we have legitimate excuses for that, but you can't really use that because the results are the results when it comes to, thinking about awards and such. You think about the game, the missed PI call. Who the hell? Miami. I get it. There was a missed PI and there was a drop pass, but that was a game where Justin Fields didn't win the game. You think about this last game, it was something that you talk about, and I'm sure we'll talk about as to what we want to see in this next game. That the last 5 minutes of that game weren't pretty with this offense. When things had to be more on schedule. And again, I'm not blaming Justin Fields. I think there's a lot going on with the offensive line and such, but just looking at what it was, it didn't happen. So that all goes into an MVP. If he wins both of those games, I may, be leaning more towards where you're at. Now, again, there's circumstances that prevented that weren't just on him.
Yeah.
But the results are the results. And I hate that I'm making this argument because we're looking at things so cut and dry with the win and loss. And and everyone who listens knows I don't give a fuck about that for this season. But in order to talk about MVP, I think that's a relevant conversation to have.
See, that's why I wanted to talk about this on the podcast, because I disagree with you. And I don't think that it's such an I feel like for MVP, you can never use the same argument for each player or each candidate you want to talk about. I feel like it is almost so situational. I mean, if Justin Fields had Travis Kelce and Juju Smith-Schuster and Andy Reid, would he be winning games? If he had Les Frazier's defense right now in Buffalo, would he be winning more games? You know what I mean? So it's like, I understand what you're saying, but the Bears are also like the first team in history to score 30 points or average like 29 points a game in 3 straight games and lose all 3 of them. So it's like, it's hard for me to say, well, Justin Fields, because his team isn't winning, it should be a knock against him for MVP, because that's just the way that I see it. So MVP has always been a fascinating conversation for me, just because there's so many different ways, like you said, and like I said earlier. I mean, if you're going MVP, if you're just going strict sense, most valuable player, it's LeBron James every single year.
Right.
It's Peyton Manning it's Tom Brady. No, you know what? I'm not even going to say Tom Brady, because he wasn't the most valuable player. Let's call it what it was until the end of the year. End of his Patriots career, even though you could argue maybe it was Gronk. Maybe it was the most valuable player. I don't know. Saw how he died out. But like Mike Trout should arguably win MVP every single season, but because his Angels team is terrible, he doesn't. And I don't necessarily agree with that. So I'm not necessarily saying that if the season ended today and I had a vote, which I definitely do not, I'm not saying I would vote for Justin Fields to be MVP. I'm just saying I believe he deserves to be in the conversation when you talk about what does the most valuable player mean right now. I'm telling you, if you added Justin Fields into some of these offenses, those numbers are going to look a lot better. And I think those numbers look great on their own. So it's kind of, I get what you're saying and I get where you're coming from. I think offensive player of the year should definitely be in conversation. I would say arguably right now it should be him, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, maybe Patrick Mahomes, right? That's probably my 4 right now.
Well, don't they have a thing now, though, where if you win MVP, you won't win Offensive Player of the Year? Haven't they sort of switched? I don't know if it's a formal thing, but I think they've informally decided, like, if you're MVP, you're not going to win Offensive Player of the Year. Because there was a year where Jonathan Taylor won Offensive Player of the Year, and he was also in the MVP conversation. Maybe Pat Mahomes won it that year. I don't remember who did. But, no, again, from that standpoint, I agree. And, again, I think he should be the front runner for Offensive Player of the Year right now, because to me, that's not, like, MVP just has more to do with winning. Yeah. It's a little bit more of a layered award than Offensive Player of the Year. Just means, like, who balled out the most this year on offense. And I think you can make the case that Justin has. Well, especially over the last 4 weeks, like, he has to finish strong because he started so slow. So if we ended it right now and Justin Jefferson or Tyreek Hill won it, I wouldn't be upset at it. But the way he's ascending, you'd have to think he's one of the front runners to get that. It's also, I get what you mean. I think really this is probably my last retort. I get what you mean when you say, like, switch him in other systems, but that's just, like, not, it's hard to even say that. I mean, because, like, for, as much as the Buccaneers are struggling, put Tom Brady on Kansas City, and I don't think anything changes. Like, it may look a little bit different, but I think he wins just as much as Pat does there. You know what I mean? Like, it's tough to say. So we may be looking at Tom as, like, he should win MVP if he was in Kansas City. So, like, if we switch role, I feel like it's a slippery slope there, because then you also look like, what if Justin was on the Texans? He'd still be doing some glorious things, but, like, I don't even know if they would have won the 3 games that we've won.
But what I'm saying is that, granted, like I understand what you're saying about Brady, but I'm talking specifically a guy like Justin Fields who's doing things, breaking records that nobody, I mean, literally has broken a record this year for rushing yards by a quarterback in a game, and then almost followed that up with breaking it again. Like, yeah, I'm talking about if a guy is able to break records at a certain position that season, he should absolutely be in a conversation for MVP. I just, because it's just not, it's not like Justin Fields is just, like, throwing for 200 and a couple touchdowns and then rushes for 50 yards. Like, those numbers are nice. So that's kind of where it comes from me with, like, a guy like Jalen Hurts, who I think has been very good. But, like, what Justin Fields is doing right now in this 4-game stretch is special. And I think that should always elevate a player into the MVP conversation. That's my 2 cents.
I hate that you're wrong. I really do.
You hate that I'm right? No, you don't. You love being right. Let's call it what it fucking is.
I do.
I mean, listen, we'll see how it goes. I'm sure you wouldn't be mad if he won MVP down the road.
No, I'm not gonna lie to you though. Part of me as well, and this is totally unrelated. It's not why I feel the way I feel. That's just my philosophy when it comes to MVP. Yeah. But part of me is like, even if he continues on this trend, I'm also rooting for him to not win it, just because I know Twitter is going to be a fucking shitstorm if we win 4 or 5 games and Justin Fields is the MVP. Like, we're already dealing with a lot of racist tropes and things with him only being a running back. Like, I can only fucking imagine the trolls and things that are going to come out, for that. So again, I would be on a personal level ecstatic. Like, he I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, because again, if you're Offensive Player of the Year, you're probably worthy of other awards. But what I'm saying is, my philosophical mind says you need to win more to get it. I would be happy for him. I'd be shouting from the rooftops. It'd be amazing.
You know what? This is setting up for, well, obviously, hopefully not a Derrick Rose career arc, because that obviously didn't go great. But this is kind of setting up like the what was it, 2009 to 2010 season, where you're like, okay, all right, what do we got? Derrick Rose looks pretty fucking good.
Most improved. That might be an award as well. He may win most. I mean, he should be a shoo-in for most improved.
Is that
do they have a most improved in the NFL?
No. I think NFL has comeback player of the year. I think that's
always like that's Saquon. Saquon's gonna win that because he's coming off an injury.
Yeah. It was like what Alex Smith wanted, even though he played like
all he had to do, he just had to take one snap. I mean, from that leg break, he could have been calling plays that year just as their OC, and he should have won it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Tua. Would you consider Tua?
Yeah, maybe. But I think Saquon coming off of 2 pretty big injuries and doing what he's doing, I think is probably more deserving.
How NFL would it be if Deshaun Watson won that award?
He likes to come other places.
Yes, he does. Jesus Christ. No, but I mean, this is kind of setting up for like because
Yeah.
Justin kind of reminds me of Derek in a certain way.
I mean, think about
the
these
way they
should be.
talk. Yeah, the way they were like level-headed.
Yeah.
Except we found out Derek was into some interesting things on the outside, but that's not important. All right, what I'm talking about is strictly on the field.
I mean, but even think about what they're able to do on the field and on the court, and this could be a fun conversation in the offseason. Like, who else in our lifetime, like, really captivated the city like that? Derek did. Maybe like the young Cubs. I don't know if you can narrow it to one, but probably Chris Bryant was. You can make the argument for him, but baseball is just so different. Baseball, there's not like
there's so much of
maybe
it.
Javi. Yeah, it was more of a total team. And then Justin Fields, right? I mean, who else? Because even thinking like when the Bears offense was good, Matt Forte was good, but I don't know, he didn't captivate the city. Like the Bears,
Jay
like
Cutler
maybe
was so split down the middle.
he was the most polarizing athlete probably that we'll ever see in a Chicago uniform. But
that's actually probably
like
that would
Urlacher
be
was great. But
yeah, I mean that would probably generate a ton of responses in a positive way. If you were to say Justin Fields is by far the most electric athlete that the Bears have, or Chicago fans have endured, it's been since Derrick Rose. I don't think
that's the only other person you can put in that conversation. I know hockey fans will get mad and they'll say Patrick Kane, but I don't watch hockey, so I don't know.
Maybe DeMar DeRozan
no,
right now?
Absolutely not.
I know Zach LaVine's your guy. I know how much you love.
Absolutely, he should be putting up empty stats with the Bobcats. Bring the Bobcats back just so they can pay him $200 million so he can put up 20 and 8 and win 27 games.
Well, no, you need the CLT jerseys. You got to have those for the Hornets.
Yeah, you need the clit. Yeah.
Got to have it.
I love that. No, I mean, but seriously, like maybe that shows how barren we've been just as a sports town. Because even thinking back to like the White Sox, well, Tim Anderson had a shot. This year was just for shit for them, but he really, not this past year, but the year before that, he really captivated the city. He was fun to watch.
And see, this goes back to something I was talking about a few weeks ago when I was talking about how the Bears need to be able to start drafting like star players. Like,
yeah,
I'm not saying to get Justin Jefferson specifically, though. I mean, my God, that catch that he had,
Jack.
I don't even.
Dude.
That's the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
I was just gonna say that's no hyperbole. That is the best catch I've ever seen in my life.
Throw out the Odell Beckham one. Throw out the George Pickens one.
Right. I don't care about the moment. People are going to say the helmet catch because it was a Super Bowl. Forget the moment. Just isolate what you saw. This man ripped the ball out of two hands of a defender, is falling down, lets it not hit the ground, and secures it. That was insane. That's the best catch I've ever seen in my life.
And even if you want to put it, even if you want to add the context of the moment, that's fourth down.
It was.
There
was context and why it was an important catch, but even just the catch itself, the level of difficulty for him to I mean, how strong? I can imagine shaking his fucking hand. How strong does your hand have to be to do that? To rip the ball that way, to maintain control, and the ball never bobbled. It wasn't like he tipped it and it bobbled. No, he had full control of that thing. That was nuts.
No, I mean, so I'm not saying they should get him. But I mean, like I said, if they can, go for it. But they need to get guys like that. They need because I mean, like Bears fans, Chicago fans in general, we've been so deprived of having true superstars in this town. Because ever since Jerry Reinsdorf sold the soul to the fucking devil, so he could have Michael Jordan, the Bulls win 6 titles. I mean, my God,
we forgot to name Michael. Someone's gonna listen to this podcast and pause and not listen anymore because we did forget to name Michael.
No. I'm not. We didn't forget Michael because I'm talking about like even if you want to stop at Derek, like it's Derek on who has gotten Bears fans, Chicago fans as excited about a player as Justin Fields has. I would argue Derrick Rose was the last one.
Nowadays, everybody wants to talk like they got something to say, but nothing comes out when they move their lips. Just a bunch of gibberish. And motherfuckers act like they forgot about Michael.
Man, nobody will ever forget Michael because everyone keeps having these stupid fucking conversations. Oh, is it LeBron or is it dude? I'm tired of it. Let it go.
I don't want to.
We'll save
get
that.
down
We'll
a whole
save
rabbit
that.
hole.
We'll save that for because we got to get to our picks so we can
let's
talk.
Let's move on
This will be a little bit quicker than it was last week. Although I say that now, and who knows how long it'll ever be. But Thursday night football, Tennessee at Green Bay. Green Bay finally showing some fucking life. I mean, goddamn, Dallas. I mean, come on, man. Like, I'm not even gonna give Green Bay that offense still doesn't look very good outside of Christian Watson just running really fast down the field and being open. That's great. But, I mean, Dallas, like, come on, man. That was your chance, and they blew it. That being said, I'm going Green Bay. I told you last week, Frank, that this could be the start of something for the Packers. And I'm telling you right now, they're going to get on a run because they always fucking do. And it's happening starting again Thursday night. I'm going Green Bay over Tennessee.
Yeah, and that's what I predicted before the year was that they'd start slow. I just thought they'd pick it up a little bit earlier than what they did, but I don't know, Jack. Tennessee is not a flashy team. They never have been in our whole fucking life. But when they have these sort of regimes that when they're winning, this is how they play it. Smash mouth football. It's in the trenches. It's running first. This is a big test for Green Bay, dude. Because Dallas, while they're a good team and probably the second best team in the NFC East, they don't bring that. We saw that in the Bears game. They don't punch you in the mouth. Tennessee is going to punch Green Bay in the mouth, and I don't know if they're going to be able to respond to that. I'm going Tennessee.
All right. I like it. We'll save Bears at Atlanta for last. Philadelphia at Indianapolis. Frank, I told you. What if this Jeff Saturday thing works? That being said, I'm going Philadelphia. I will not be tricked by either team. Philadelphia is still clearly the better team than Indianapolis. And the Raiders are just so damn bad. There's no way Indianapolis wins 2 in a row. No way. I'm going Philly.
Yeah, I think it was more of an indictment on how bad the Raiders are per Jeff Saturday's tweet before he was the coach. But it also it gave me like a, Panthers trading Christian McCaffrey. Exactly. We're all in. We're doing it for the skipper. And the Eagles aren't that team to do that against. I'm going Eagles.
The Jets at New England. I had a tougher time with this than I thought I was going to, Frank. That being said, I'm going to go New England. I can't see Zach Wilson going into New England and winning a football game. I can't do it.
That's really where I stand with it. I think it'll be one of those ugly games because Mac Jones isn't having a great year, but there's something about Bill B that just owns the Jets and more specifically their quarterbacks. He ruined Sam Darnold. He's going to ruin Zach Wilson. Well, Zach Wilson, he didn't need to be ruined. He is who he is. But
he came in ruined.
Yeah, he came in ruined. But yeah, I think the Patriots win like an ugly, 20-14 type of game.
Well, I told you. I mean, Josh McDaniels go running home to Daddy in New England.
Dude, that's gonna be a fun conversation to have. We're in such a unique year. We're gonna have like 2 or 3 first year head coaches just get bounced. Because we've also been in a unique situations where these are first year head coaches that are expected to win right away, and that's usually not the case.
Yep.
And they ain't fucking winning. So we're about to really see what is what here.
Washington at Houston. Man, Taylor Heineke. He's just a baller. Let's just call. I mean, I know he had the strip sack on the first play of the game, but come on, man. Like, he's throwing fucking dimes to Terry McLaurin last night. It was impressive to watch. I'm going Washington. Houston is just like they're just a mess right now. They need a lot. They need wide receivers. They need a quarterback, and they need a better defense as well. So I'm going Washington.
I'm going Washington as well. Again, it's hard for me to pick Houston really against anyone. They're an NFL team, so they're going to surprise us and win another game or two, probably, or at least one more game. But, I mean, talent-wise, up and down, Washington is better. And it's not us being fooled by them beating Philadelphia. The only point I had on that is that's a division game. People want to scream how the NFL is fixed. Division games get fucking wonky, dude. These guys play each other twice a year. So shit happens. But yeah, they should win that game.
Rams at New Orleans. I'm gonna go New Orleans in this one. Regardless of who's playing quarterback, if it's Matt Stafford, if it's John Wolford. I mean, the Rams kind of seem broken at this point. Like, Cooper Kupp obviously out for an extended period of time. If not, it sounds like it could be the rest of the year, depending on how the rest of the season goes. I mean, I know people are going insane about Allen Robinson now, but like, dude, have you been watching all year? He's not doing. And if it's John Wolford at quarterback, like, come on, man. I'm gonna go New Orleans because their defense, I think, can keep them in this game and ultimately win it.
Yeah, I'm going New Orleans as well for all the reasons that you mentioned. I mean, the Rams are still very talented on paper, so they could pull these types of games off, but how the fuck can you have any sort of faith? Like, I know the Saints haven't been a good team this year, but there's spurts of like, man, the defense looked good this game.
Yep.
You know, Andy Dalton had some good drives. There hasn't been any, even in the Rams wins, it's ugly.
Yeah. Yeah, it just hasn't looked right all year. It's been
and
surprising.
Not for nothing, that locker room is fucking divided. Jalen Ramsey has been very outspoken for how upset he is at that offense, and quite frankly, I don't blame him. That defense has not been all that bad this year. Matter of fact, they've been good. I haven't looked at the statistics. I wouldn't be surprised if they're a top 5 statistical defense this season because they played well.
They did against Colt McCoy, who I could not believe is still in this fucking league. I was stunned to see that. Cleveland at Buffalo. I mean, come on. This has to be the get-right game for Buffalo. Obviously, Deshaun Watson is eligible to practice. I believe he will be back not next week because I think they're on a bye next week. And then I think it's week 13. Yes, week 13. They'll be back
who they play?
Houston. Yeah, they play the Houston Texans. Don't tell me the NFL doesn't like its stories, brother.
Yeah. No shit. Now I'm going. I was looking. Yeah, the Bills. This has to be their get-right game, right? But it's also it could not. They went through this weird funk last year towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
Right before the playoffs, and they just seem to hit this weird wall. And I tried to put my finger on it watching that game last week, and I was like, is it because they don't have that great of a running game? But the running game worked, and it
Devin
still looked like
Singletary
weird.
Looked pretty good.
It just it looked. Josh Allen just seems to maybe lose focus every now and then. It could be one of those things though, like how I thought it was going to be with the Rams this year, where like early on, just regular season doesn't do it for them. That might be the case with Josh Allen sometimes, where he's like, it's fucking November. It's about to be Thanksgiving. Who gives a fuck? Like, get me to the playoffs.
It's like, it's cold. Let's get this done with.
Yeah, you know what I mean? That's pure speculation. But, I mean, the Browns just aren't that great of a team. I'm going with the Bills.
Carolina at Baltimore. I'm going Baltimore. Really no reason to expand on that one.
I'm going Baltimore as well. But if Baltimore is going to do anything like Baltimore does, this is going to be an ugly, way too close of a game, like 20-19 or something. But they should win this one, though.
They have no goddamn receivers, man.
I know.
It's bad over there. Detroit at the Giants. I mean, goddamn. You would think the Lions fans won the Super Bowl because they won 2 in a row. I mean, you got away with a lot of penalties. Let's call it what it is, Lions fans. You're not beating the Giants at home. I'm going Giants.
This was one of the tougher ones that I had to pick this year, or this week. Because the Giants still don't look like a good football. It's so weird. They don't look good, but they just win. So like you are what your record says you are. But there's like nothing that I feel like you can point to if we're like thinking about playoff matchups where you're like, man, the Giants are better at this than that team. Like you look at the other elite teams in the league, they don't really have.
They'd get their asses kicked by the elite. They're like the Tennessee of the NFC.
That's a very good comparison. I agree with that. But to that point, it doesn't shock me when Tennessee loses to bad or average teams.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm going with the upset here, Jackie. I think the Lions keep it rolling.
Is it even an upset? I'm not even sure. Well, I guess record-wise, it's probably an upset.
It has to be.
Yeah,
well, let me see what the spread is.
You're right.
Giants only -3. I mean, that's usually what you give to the home.
That's a pick'em. That's a pick'em game right there. Interesting. Yeah, I'll give you the Lions. I won't be surprised, but I just come on. Giants are gonna win. Frank, I mean, holy shit. This game is going to be probably the worst game of Sunday. Raiders at Denver. I mean, I'm picking Denver just because they have a very good defense. I feel like How could you how could you pick the Raiders in this scenario? You have Derek Carr. I was going to say Derek Carr crying, and then it turned into Derek Carr. Derek Carr crying at the podium because he's so frustrated about how bad this team has been lately. This thing is done. Like it's Urban Meyer-esque. I don't understand how people were excited for Josh McDaniels to take over this offense. Like I understandably excited about Davante Adams pairing up with Derek Carr because that's been pretty successful, obviously. But like this dude showed you who he was in Denver, and he showed you again who he was in Indianapolis. Like I don't understand how the Raiders were like, you know what? Yeah, he's the guy. He's the guy. It's so broken in there. But then you have the fucking flip side. You have Denver with just a terrible offense. Like it's wild, man. It's absolutely crazy. I'm going Denver just because they're at home and they have a good defense.
Yeah, I'm going with them for the same exact reason. I will say, for as many gripes that piled up over the years with Ryan Pace when he was the GM of the Bears, he gave us a parting gift with Justin Fields. I'll always have a place in my heart for that. But just fucking imagine, Jackie, if Denver would have accepted that, or Seattle would have accepted that trade from the Bears. Holy shit!
I mean would we be Bears? Would we be doing this podcast anymore?
I honestly don't know. I legitimately don't know. But you think about where Ryan Pace's place is amongst all the GMs. You probably slot him right in at average in our lifetime. I mean, he wasn't like the worst, but he was clearly not the best. If that trade would have went through, you're talking about probably the worst. I mean, it would have taken that one deal to say he is the worst executive that Chicago has ever seen.
And it's so crazy because at the time I remember talking about it. Like we were kind of excited about the prospect of Russell Wilson just because we didn't have an answer at quarterback, right? We had nothing at that point, and it's like, all right, we're getting a Pro Bowl. We could be getting a Pro Bowl quarterback, someone who's been to the playoffs, someone who can put up numbers, like just make. And again, I think more so than winning, it was, the Bears would be fun with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, that's
and
exactly
God damn, how wrong would we have been at that point? You're absolutely right. That would have been yikes. Dallas at Minnesota. Man, Dallas just not who they thought I was. Fuck it. I'm going Minnesota. Late game. I know Kirk Cousins isn't the best in these types of situations. Fuck it. I'm going Minnesota. They got to prove me that they're not very good. I'm going Minnesota.
I'm going Minnesota as well. And you know what? Kirk Cousins may not be good in these situations, but Kirk O'Chains is fucking prepped and ready. But not for nothing though, Jack. We talked about that catch by Justin Jefferson being the best catch that we've ever seen. That may have been the best game I've ever seen. Regular season anyway. That game was fucking insane.
It was wild.
I mean, Josh Allen fumbling, but then him coming right back and tying. I mean, that was an extremely fun game to watch. Like usually I get upset when like there's 2 minutes left, but it takes like 20 minutes of real time. I could have put up with 40 minutes of that in the last 2 minutes because that was phenomenal.
Yeah,
really enjoyed that. But yeah, I'm going Minnesota as well.
Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. Come on. Going Cincinnati. Pittsburgh, I know they're coming off a win, but I'm not going to put too much stock into that. Let's go Cincy.
I'm going Cincy as well. The Steelers are going to be another thing that I really want to, talk about in the offseason and keep an eye on because this is the first time they're ever going to be in this situation with Mike Tomlin. They're going to be a top 10, potentially top 5 pick. And they just picked a quarterback. Are they going to rebuild? Like there's a ton of different ways that they can go about this, but with potentially like Tomlin leaving or like becoming an executive and like getting a coach. But I'm really curious to see how they proceed forward because we've literally never seen it with them.
Right. Yeah. No, we've literally never seen that. Kansas City at the Chargers. I mean, come on, Kansas City all the way.
Kansas City. That's another one. The Chargers are firing their coach. They have to. He's done. No way.
The only thing I would say, the only excuse I think I'd give Brandon Staley is the fact that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams have been hurt, and Justin Herbert, I think, is very clearly hurt. with
Well,
the ribs.
he's dealing with some broken ribs, but the fact that it looks the same exact as last year, like the in-game decisions that he's making.
It's the
his
defense
weird
to me. It's the defense to me that does it. Like, this defense has stars almost at every level, and you don't really see them do anything. Like, it's very weird that this defense isn't one of the best defenses in the league. I think that's It's
almost like Khalil Mack is just a name now.
Huh. Frank wants to spit truth. He wants to spit truth out there. No, but PFF grades him as one of the best players in the league.
Dude, they're so weird. They've graded Sam Mustipher as like a 90 percentile block, or whatever, 90 blocker in the same game where he had 2 plays where he was fucking running around like a chicken with his head cut off. I don't understand their metrics.
I don't either, and it's one of the things that makes me dislike advanced metrics in terms of football. Baseball, I think it's very valuable. I think it's very useful. I think there is a place for it in the NFL as well. But like, it's just like how, like, I'll never forget. I guess I will forget. There was a game last year, or in his Bears tenure, that Khalil Mack had, where it was like he was fucking all over the place, and they graded him as like one of the worst players in the game. And it's like, dude, like, what? I don't. How does that make any sort of sense? I agree with you. I don't really understand how they grade stuff out.
Jack, did you just assume that you're going to get Alzheimer's? Why did you say you're going to forget that?
Well, because I was like about to spit like, oh, here's what game it was. Here's who they played.
I see.
Here's what
I thought
year
you were
it was.
just like saying, you're
predicting
like
the future that I'm gonna have. I think it's very well possible. Let's leave it.
That's fair. But I will say the statement about advanced metrics. The one thing that we're not privy to any of the advanced metrics that the NFL uses and their staff. So if they could be looking at something totally different, they have to be, right? Like, I feel like because I don't think PFF takes into account the system and people's assignments. NFL coordinators and head coaches understand that. I think that has to be in their data department.
I would think so.
Like, weighted in, right?
Yeah, they're not using PFF. they're not.
I certainly fucking hope not.
But see, that's what it's something else that makes me laugh, and we'll get to the final couple picks here in a second. But like, a Sunday Night Football, every night when they do the player introductions, and they have right at the bottom, they have the PFF like grades. It'll be like a center, and he'll be like 55 out of 162, and you're like, oh, so he's not even like a starting caliber center. He's like he's like a backup like that. Oh, but then Chris Collinsworth and Mike Tirico will be talking about it. They'll be like, yeah, this guy's a stud. And it's like, but PFF has him just like a fucking backup. Like, how does that?
But there was also, I forgot what game I was watching. Now that you said that, there was one game, and they were just talking about, like, maybe, was it the Philly? Was it an Eagles game? I don't remember. They were like, the best offensive line in football. And just like you said, it was like 79 of 104, 86. And I'm like, what are you guys grading these guys at?
Yeah.
And how are there 104 centers in the league?
Right.
Like, what the fuck are you talking about, PFF? Like, maybe we're being ignorant here and we don't know what, but like, where does that number come from? Where does 100 and something come from? Where does 70 something? Are you grading practice squad people and like ranking them above?
And then you have to go into like you go to their website and they make you sign up, and they're like, you'll never know unless you pay for it. And it's like,
I've never seen any player, and this, I'm sure it's happened. I'm just saying I've never seen it rated in the top 10 when they show those people. They're all low.
Yeah, it's weird. They're always like,
here comes the best receiver in the league, Tyreek Hill, the University of blah blah blah, 84 out of 376. I'm like, Tyreek is getting rated that low. What are we doing here, PFF?
I mean, it's just so true. It's so fucking weird, man. I've never understood the PFF. Why do they include it? I don't like. They never do anything with the numbers during the game.
You know why they do it though? It's to have some sort of appeal to people who don't like the casual fan. Yeah. Because I've had this similar complaint with boxing. They keep the CompuBox punch stats, certain broadcasts, and that doesn't tell you anything about the fight. So people even at the end like, he landed more punches than him. Like, how did he lose this fight? That doesn't show you the context of any of the punch, because if I just literally graze you, they count that as a punch. But if you deck me right in the eye, it's also just counted as a punch. So it gives you no context on how those punches landed. And it's like the same thing there. They just want to give you like an idea, but it's not helpful at all. As a matter of fact, I think it's hurtful.
I agree. I I totally agree. Let's wrap this up here. San Francisco at Arizona. Regardless of who's playing quarterback, whether it's Kyler Murray or not, I'm going San Francisco. They've obviously figured their shit out, and Frank, they should be on the phone yesterday trying to trade Trey Lance. See what you can get, if you can get something back. Because
wow, you think?
Dude, I understand he's not the best quarterback, but Jimmy Garoppolo is just such a better fit for what they're trying to do right now, and they have just so many damn weapons for him. Jimmy G is a guy you can win with, right? Like, the NFC is not that strong. Trey Lance, it's tough to say that he didn't look great, though, because the one game he really got to play in was that fucking monsoon. I don't know, man. I think they should just stick with Jimmy G at this point. Like, he's playing really well, and this offense just seems to work better with him.
Yeah.
In implemented. So I don't know.
But I you know what? I disagree about looking to trade Trey Lance, because this may be, if he heals right and he comes back physically okay, which he should, this may be better for him. And maybe better for the organization. Like, you still have this guy under contract for at least 2 more years, if not a 5th-year option. You know what I mean? So it's like, you don't have to look for the next. If you were already bought in on him and this injury isn't setting him back once he's healed physically, you should still be high on him as a talent. So it's another year for him to study the playbook. It's another year for him to get acclimated with this offense, unless Kyle Shanahan gets fired, which I don't forecast, or he just retires or something. But this may be, a silver lining for him. But he's still gonna have, I think we saw how important it was with Justin Fields last year to learn on the job still. So there's still, that portion of it as well. But I'm going 49ers as well. The Cardinals, Cliff might be done too. Fire everybody. There's 3 coaches that should still be here next year, and they're all in Chicago. Eberflus, Luke Getsy, and Alan Williams. The best coaching staff in the fucking league. Not even close.
I don't know about
Andy Reid, who?
I don't
remember him rushing for 250 yards, 6 straight games, breaking the Steelers record from 1930. 1930, Jack, segregation was still a thing. That's how fucking far back we're breaking records, baby. They're rolling in the grave watching a black quarterback doing this to them. That's what the fuck's happening. Let's go, Justin.
The conversation about Alan Williams may need to be had, because listen, I understand he's not playing with a lot of talent, but dude, come on, man, you got to blitz. You start picking up the fucking blitz.
I get it.
You got to cover for your deficiencies, and your fucking pass rush doesn't do jack shit now. You have nothing there, and you're costing your corners confidence, because Kyler Gordon's just getting torched. Jalen Johnson looks like a fucking bum out there, being graded as the worst player. I mean, come on, man. Like, Al Williams, fucking, like, you got to do something.
Talk to him, Jackie.
I mean, it's absolutely wild. Yeah, your best player right now is Jack Sanborn. Look, come on. What are we doing here? What are we doing? What is this?
Jackie, you're not wrong on some of your points, and I love the passion. But let me tell you, Alan Williams is keeping his job next season. Because if there's one thing that the Lord doesn't like, it's Chicago sports, and he's going to find a way to torture us. The NFL God.
I'm not even saying that Alan Williams is bad.
No, I'm kidding.
No, but Alan Williams is actually, that's what's frustrating to me, Frank. He was calling good games earlier in the year.
He was.
And it's not like, you cannot tell me that the loss of a 37-year-old Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith, you can't tell me that those 2 guys have just tanked this defense, unless the fucking plan is to just tank for picks. Like, I don't understand how this defense has gotten this much worse. It makes no sense unless guys are hurt in ways that we just don't know, which is very possible. Because Jalen Johnson, I mean, come on, man. Something is going on there. Granted, he may not have been as good as Bears fans, you and I even have suggested that he is. But come on, man. There's no way he's this bad. He's getting outraced by a backup tight end. Like, come on.
I know. And that's what I was just going to say. I didn't have very many thoughts going into this game as to what I wanted to see. But that's one of them. Is Jalen Johnson has got to get his act together, man. You're talking about a guy who had a fan base behind him. And I don't think we were this extreme about it. We thought he was a good corner. I don't know if elite was ever a thing, for us, it's one of those things where you have to continue to prove yourself there because he's never looked like Sauce Gardner. You know what I mean? Like he just has never been that, or even like Kyle Fuller. When he was really good for us, but you start looking at why this defense has been disappointing. We can't get a pass rush. Okay. So you can throw the defensive backs a bone a little bit, but we've seen defenses in Chicago rely on coverage sacks. You think about that 2015 defense before they got Khalil Mack. That's all they fucking got were coverage sacks. Kyle Fuller was balling. But did we get Prince Amukamara just yet? I think we did.
Yes.
Balling. He had a good 2-3 years with us. Like, talent still is going to win out. Like you're not just like you said, the example that you just used, that tight end sprinted past him, and I thought it was Jalen Jones. It's like, oh, here goes or Kendall Vildor. Here goes fucking Vildor. And I looked, I was like, wait a minute, that's 33.
That's 33.
What the fuck? I mean, so he has got to step it up. And I think that's a not only for winning purposes or the total defense. That's a huge red flag because we thought with the drafting of Kyler Gordon, even with him being bad earlier in the year, he's also had a bad game last week, but he's shown some flashes. And for me as a rookie, that's all I can ask for to string me along into year 2 or 3, right? It's like, give me some flashes. Now let's see you get consistent. Jalen Johnson has regressed immensely. And this means we have yet another hole on defense. Because now if Jalen Johnson continues to play this way, it wouldn't shock me if we drafted in the 2nd or the 3rd another cornerback because we fucking need one. And we shouldn't after we just drafted a corner.
What I'm hoping is it is as simple as him being hurt. Because if you'll recall, they had a guy brought up from the practice squad ready to go in case Jalen Johnson was out. He ended up playing, and then they sent that guy back down, made him inactive. So that's my hope. My hope is just that he's hurt and they're just not saying anything. Because you're right. It would be incredibly, incredibly disappointing if the first 2 picks that Ryan Poles made as the Bears GM was to basically establish the secondary. And then we have to go back to the well, whether it's in free agency or in the draft, which I think they're going to have to anyways. We've talked about this, like, Can Vildor, Jalen Jones? I mean, come on, those just aren't reasonable options. It would just be disappointing. And I think this is a good test. I think you're right. This next game is a great test because you're going up against 2 very, very talented wide receivers in Drake London and Kyle Pitts. Granted, Kyle Pitts hasn't had the season that I think a lot of people were hoping or expecting he would. But this is a good test for the secondary, and not for nothing. Like, Jaquan Brisker, man, show me something. Do something. Like, I understand the talent isn't there. We've talked about this a number of times. Where are the turnovers, man? Like, where are the fucking? I know Jack Sanborn had one, but because Jalen Johnson apparently sniped the guy in the head, that got taken away. It's still an unbelievable call. I absolutely wild. But I'm not seeing the hits principle come through. Like I'm just not seeing it. And man, I'm not going to say we were wrong about Travis Gibson and Dominique Robinson necessarily. But to me, those 2 guys have been arguably the biggest disappointments on the defensive side of the ball. If Jalen Johnson isn't hurt, obviously he would be number 1 for me. But
yeah,
because we really thought, given an opportunity, both guys would flourish, and they just aren't winning. They're not doing anything. Like, you look, Justin Jones is really the only guy on that defensive line who's really consistently performing.
Yeah, I totally agree. But again, it's just one of those things. Yeah, I want to see. I'm not as down on the defense as a whole and the hits principle stuff until they get more talent. Because and people, are probably like, well, we traded away we weren't a good defense with Roquan and with
3 wins.
Robert Quinn. That's what I mean. So it's like they still weren't very good. But on the offensive side of the ball, the running back situation in which we touched on is something I'm really looking to. I have no predictions, but I'm going to have reactions right after that game. But I think the only thing for me, two things really, and they're really quick. They're not much. Claypool has to be more involved. This is not a very good defense in the Atlanta Falcons. We need to get him more involved. He needs to. He needs to play 90% of the snaps plus. It's just I should not see him off the field unless he just made a big play and he needs a breather. And then two, with the offense, I want to start seeing more scheduled plays sprinkled in. I love the Justin Fields magic, the backyard football. We're always going to have that until his athleticism goes away in year 24, because he's going to play that long for us. But that portion is going to be there. I need to see this team have some more on-schedule throws, because it's in there, and I don't know whose fault it is exactly. I think you have to share the blame between Getsy, Fields, and the weapons. How you dice it up percentage-wise, you can do that. People can do that. But I need to see more of it. I need to see it more consistently. And I think, just speaking of the game, the Bears should win this. Like, dare I say, I don't think Atlanta can match our firepower. Like, the Bears offense has been elite the last 3 weeks. And I don't know, there's nothing that Atlanta does that like worries me, that makes me feel like, we can't score 30 again. And there's nothing that Atlanta does on offense outside, like, we're not gonna be able to stop the run. So whoever the fuck they put back there is going for 100. But do I trust Marcus Mariota to do anything that these quarterbacks we've played prior have done? I don't think so. He may have a big game on the ground too, but like, he's Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, this game will probably be over in about 50 minutes.
This isn't to be the Mark Burley game of the NFL. This thing's getting in and out.
Yeah, the Bears. I'm going Bears. I don't know if I don't think I established that, but I'm picking the Bears. I'm gonna go back to the well one more time. God damn it, third time's the charm. But it's like, the Bears should absolutely kill this team. I'm sorry, like
they can't. You said that about the Lions. We can't kill ananybody. We can win games. We can win a game or two, but we can't kill anyone. Our defense can't get a stop.
Yes, they can. This is it. This real quick, I wanted to touch on the Chase Claypool thing. Chase Claypool, 35% of the snap share in his Bears debut. Mm-hmm. 31% in this past game.
Jack,
19 snaps total.
I didn't even see that, and I wasn't like jotting things down before our reaction. But remember, I said it felt like we used him more in the first week that we had him than this week, and I don't like that.
That's disappointing. And I would love to, when the Bears talk this week, I would love for Luke Getsy to explain what's going on there, because that to me is unacceptable.
Yeah,
there's no excuse for you trading a second round pick. Granted, first game, fine. That was
absolutely
something that you and I had talked about. It's something I mentioned to people in dynasty leagues and things like that. Like, temper your expectations. He's probably not going to play that much. The second week with a full week of practice against a really fucking bad defense, he plays less than he did in his debut. How does that make sense? That is that's insane. That's insane to me.
I agree.
That's absolutely crazy. But that being said, I'm still going to go Bears regardless of how much Chase Claypool plays. Justin Fields is going to be the best player on the field. This is going to be a game they have to win. Not have to, but this is going to be a game that they do win.
Yeah, I'm going Bears as
well. The Ryan Pace revenge game.
Yeah. I'm thinking like 33-24 Bears.
No, come on. It's going to be like 45-42.
Hey, if we can get in the 40s, that'd be phenomenal. We should have been in the 40s against the Patriots. I mean, maybe that's the red flag. I remember early on in Nagy's career or his tenure with the Bears, we ignored something. We're like, it's offensive is the coach of the year. But there were some things in that first year, and especially in that second year, when he's just letting it rip, calling plays, just getting to the zone. What if that was it? What if that was red flag number one for Eberflus? That he should have went for 40, and he's not a fucking killer. He's not the killer that we need. So what we do is... I brought that
up in the post-game show, and you yelled at me. You said, nah, man, come on. It's
but now, no. With hindsight, we may be able to see if that was true or not. But then what if this happens, Jack? Ryan Poles recognizes that this offseason. He says, you know what? We need to change the scenery. And Peyton Manning becomes your head coach of the Chicago Bears, and Justin Fields is just out here fucking slinging dick, 300 passing yards a game, 14 wins, MVP, 2023. Who says no?
I would die of happiness if Peyton Manning became the head coach of the Bears. I would die. I would literally, like, I wouldn't even need to watch the season. Give me the announcement.
Jack, we may have to have a segment where I just like make up scenarios and have you react to them in the off season. Because I feel like I can paint. I like every episode. I can just paint a different picture. I think
you're a menace in that sense, because the things that your brain comes up with and your ability to con people into believing anything you say, it's impressive. It's really impressive.
You've seen it firsthand.
You came out firing. Oh, Cooper Kupp done with an ACL, and everybody's like, "Oh fuck!"
I know.
I'm like, guys, it's been like 20 minutes. How?
3 of them like, holy shit, man! I didn't even see the play. I wasn't even watching the game.
You got me on a DJ Moore. I don't think we ever talked about that on the podcast.
No.
It was right after the Claypool thing, and I'm like, give me more. And you're like, all right, the Bears just traded for DJ Moore. I'm like looking at Twitter. I'm like, nah, they fucking, God damn it, Frank fucking got me, because you preyed on my excitement, and I don't appreciate that. It was funny though. I'll give you that. It was very funny. But
all right, Jackie, let's get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, that'll do it for this week's edition of the Bear With Us podcast. We appreciate everyone for listening, as always. We will be back on Sunday once again to do our post-game show. Actually, Frank might be solo for that. You might be solo. I'm attending the Blackhawks game for the Marian Hossa retirement thing. My dad's a big Marian Hossa guy, so I don't even know if I'll see the end of the game, unfortunately. That's disappointing. But Frank's finding this out live, and you can tell.
I mean, it is what it is.
Because he knows that you guys love him more than me anyways. So
that's true.
We'll go from there. But all right, Frankie, we'll get out of here and go Bears. We'll see what happens on Sunday, man.
Yep. Later, Jackie. Later, everybody.